All right, everybody, welcome to our July meeting. So glad to have all of you here, and I hope you have recovered from the quilt show and are relaxed a little bit, at least, and found all the stuff that you bought and putting it to good use. But we now have our July meeting. So, um, the presentation for tonight, or the agenda for tonight, excuse me, is the same as it always is on Thursday nights, and that we have the presentation, and we will have announcements and then show and tell if there are any, and then door prizes. And we ask that when the speaker is on, please do not have your microphones on. Please mute your microphone. So that helps with the overall presentation. And let's see here. So we go to our speaker directly. Our speaker tonight is Lorraine Woodruff, and she's going to talk about express yourself, text and art and quilts. And she has a lot of very contemporary quilts that she has made, and they have a big focus on color, improvisation, and recycled and repurposed fabrics. And so she spent a long time looking at fabrics and going into textures, and then she uses her quilts to express herself politically and socially commentarily. If you look for her on the website, her quilting name is Quilting in the Fog, and she is in San Francisco, so she comes to us from there. But one thing I noticed that I can relate to with her website is that she introduces herself and she talks about going into a place and feeling buttons and other things that she's going through a store. And I thought, oh, I do that same thing. I can understand that. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Lorraine. She has asked, though, that you hold your questions till the end or put them in the chat, and then we'll read them at the end. So if you could just let her speak, and then we'll have a question and answer session afterwards. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lorraine.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here. Let's see if I got that going. You can see my screen okay?
Yep, it's good.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I love talking with quilt guilds, and I started to tell Linda and Sarah the story, but there's a book he's a sociologist named Robert Putnam, and I don't know, when I first started working in nonprofits, he'd written a book. This is pre-internet, pre-social media, and it was called Bowling Alone. And it was really about kind of the demise of America not being in groups, and how he talked a lot about how, 100 years ago, the Boys Club, the YMCA, United Way, Girls Club, all these, great kind of American institutions came into being, and how important they were in American life throughout the 20th century. And really starting in probably the 70s, people stopped voting as much. People stopped participating in the PTA. People stopped doing a lot of these things. And that was before the internet and social media. And he recently had a documentary. It was kind of relooking at his data now in the internet age. And one of the things he talked about was how I think there's a documentary and it's on Netflix and it's called Join or Die. But he's talking about how in societies and in communities where people are joining things, it's better for their communities and it's better for their health and better for society. And I've been really wanting to write him and say, I really want to tell you about quilt guilds because, quilt guilds are alive and thriving in America. And, I love talking with different quilt guilds, and, everybody's, people that are like you who are doing these things, and you're participating, they're volunteer run organizations, are sort of like the best of what he wrote about that was so good about America, 100 years ago. So anyway, I just always really want to say, hey, you're good for you. You're in a quilt guild, you're participating. It's good for you, and it's good for your community, good for the state of Minnesota, and it's good for America. So that's my patriotic speech to quilters. So thanks for having me here talking about commentary quilts. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, my quilting history, and some of the influences that have gotten me to what I'm doing. And then I'll show you the commentary quilts that I'm making. This is kind of I use these three pictures as me in a nutshell. So I was born, actually was raised in Texas, and my mother made all of our clothes growing up. I think like a lot of us in those days, you sewed most of your clothes. And my mom had said, I'm not going to buy you clothes, but I'll buy you all the patterns and fabric you want from Hancock's if you'll sew your own clothes, as a way to strong arm me into learning how to sew, because I was apparently a real reluctant, bratty kid in not wanting to learn how to sew. I went to University of Texas at Austin, and I played in the band. And I was actually a marketing. I was a business major, and I never took an art class. But if anybody would have asked me up until probably 20 years ago, like what was my art, I think I would have considered myself a musician, because that's what I spent so much of my time studying and doing. And then after college, I joined the Peace Corps, and I went to Peace Corps in Kenya. This picture is me 2 weeks in, and I'd had 2 weeks of Kiswahili. They plunk you to go live with a family and do deep immersion in Swahili. And here I am with like 2 weeks of Swahili under my belt, trying to play charades and and be able to survive in Kenya. But what the Peace Corps Kenya experience really was transformational for me. I worked with women in development projects, particularly I worked with a tie-dye cloth and garment manufacturing group that was women that did these works, and they were doing this really to make income for their families and for their children's school fees and things. And there's a common wisdom in economic development that if you invest in women, you have some of the biggest improvements in economic development in countries. And so this was kind of a new idea at the time, but it really transformed the way I thought about myself as an American. I was, of course, I was the only American most of these people had ever met, and maybe have since met since then, but thought a lot about, both my government being, I really came out of it a very patriotic, but very progressive and liberal individual, but really took our American values and democracy very seriously, which shows up a lot in some of my work. Of course, I left Kenya and didn't go back to Texas. Ended up coming to San Francisco, where I met my husband in my first job. I was a marketing person for an architectural firm. We got married. We have two beautiful children who were raised in San Francisco, or graduated from college, and are now back here and gainfully employed, and are the light of my life. So I'm a very fortunate person. I really have everything I ever wanted in the family and the life that I have. My quilt beginnings really started with these two. So they're, you can see they're mid to late 20s right now, but I made, I was making things for my family, and, making quilts for my kids' bedrooms and stuff. I really did a lot of taking with the growing family, you run out of kids grow out of their clothes a lot. So I was taking a lot of my kids' clothing and our clothing and turning it into quilts. And it was really it was the beginning of blogs and things. I really am largely a self-taught quilter. I would just look online and see people doing blogs about tutorials and basics, and kind of tried out different techniques for lots of years. And so a little bit a little bit before the pandemic, I started doing some more like art quilting. I was mostly doing quilts for my kids' schools and for fundraisers and things. I lost my job in the pandemic. I was a nonprofit director, and really just sat around and quilted all the time, thinking I was gonna, that it was only gonna last a couple months and I'd go back to working. And I ended up kind of pivoting to do quilting mostly full time, both teaching and creating, but also I do a little bit of nonprofit development on the side. So my work falls really into three groups. I'm going to talk about commentary, but just introduce a little bit of this: polychrome, reimagined, and commentary. And polychrome is the stuff that I do it's usually very improvisational. I love color. I love scraps. I save everything, as you can see, and repurpose it. But I really love finding myself immersed in color and just kind of making things up as I go. And so these are actually things that I teach, some of the kinds of things that I teach in the polychrome. I also teach at City College of San Francisco Extension right now, and I teach a basic improv quilting class, and it's a series that's 11. I teach a lot here in San Francisco, so a lot of it is these techniques. Reimagined is what I call, taking clothing and reimagining it in new ways. I love using men's shirting in quilts. This was one of my first ones. It's my husband's shirts that he was going to give to Goodwill, and I'd made a New Year's resolution not to buy any fabric. So instead, I took all of his shirts and I cut them up. And these are all quilts that are each made from 7 shirts. And my goal is to make 7 quilts, each using 7 shirts. But you can do a lot with just 7 shirts. And this is more of our family's clothing. The one on the top left was one of my son's pants that he outgrew one year in like high school during a growth spurt. And the one on the right is during the pandemic, we couldn't, the Goodwills and everything were closed for donating things. So I was digging out my stuff and I thought, I'm just going to chop up these dresses that I'm not using anymore. It's 5 dresses that I made into that quilt. And of course, more of our family's outgrown jeans on the bottom left. So the third group of quilts I call commentary quilts, and these are quilts with a message. And I really always give a little bit of a caveat as I start this, that these are ways for me that I have found for me to sort of process my feelings, my political beliefs, my thoughts. They're my beliefs, but they may not be yours. But I really encourage people to use their quilting as their art or their way of expressing whatever it is. But just, recognizing that my beliefs might not be what some people's are, but I hope people will use their First Amendment rights to express whatever whatever their beliefs are. I do a lot of text. Some of the things I do are not in text, but text artist influences, I wanted to share a little bit. I think right after I graduated from college, I went with girlfriends to, our little trip to Europe. And I remember seeing Ed Ruscha at the Pompidou in Paris. And it really struck me. I really like his work. He has like kind of odd phrases and things and over paintings. And I just found it really intriguing. And it was probably one of the first times I remember seeing text art as art and it really capturing me. Probably 10 or 12 years later, I was in Los Angeles and there was a big exhibit at the Museum of Contemporary Art there with Barbara Kruger. You may have seen her work. She was a graphic designer, I think, for Glamour magazine. You can sort of imagine. Don't you remember the don't photos where it'd have somebody, I mean, her text looks very much like those Glamour and, women's magazines at that time. She worked there. This piece on the left she did I think for Planned Parenthood, probably in 1989. It was post-Roe, but Dobbs. And then I love the one on the right, where it says, let me see, I gotta move it. I think it says, the world is small. It's a small world, but not if you have to clean it. Okay, let's see. And then this is actually something that I pulled from the news recently. She has a lot of work that's on the side of buildings or inside of things. This is actually on the side of a building that's the Los Angeles Museum of Contemporary Art. And these are, military. It's right downtown in Los Angeles. And I just thought it was interesting to see her work that I like and, what's kind of happening where her work is. And interesting words with what's happening there. Another person that's really interesting to me is, her name is Jenny Holzer. And she has, I'm trying to change my view on something. She, in the 70s, was an artist and started, printing. She'd write these things called inflammatory essays with a series of one-liners that are kind of truisms. And she'd write these things and then plaster them all over New York. And so, I think this was at the Whitney. I didn't realize there was actually a whole one of her walls in the Museum of Modern Art here in San Francisco. But when I've seen these pieces, it's just really interesting just to read all of them because they're just these really interesting kind of odd truisms. She's also started doing things that are projections, and they're often on buildings or natural settings, usually quotes from people that are very poignant. And I just think it's another interesting way to express herself. If you're on Instagram, you may already know about the Tiny Pricks Project. I started following her probably in 2017, and she started this whole thing where I think this was her very first one. It was her grandmother had this needlepoint, and she didn't know what she was going to do with it, and she embroidered a very stable genius over it. But a lot of the things that what she does is take old like hankies and linens, and often they have funny little, images of people or settings, and she every day she has something new, but she usually embroiders something on it that's pertinent to relevant to topics for the day. So in recently, there was one that said, text stop to opt out of updates on war plans. And I know this one right after Chief Roberts said this, he'd said impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement when there was a lot of discussion about impeaching judges who had rulings people didn't like. And then this is California poppies on the left, and Donald Trump say, "Enjoy the water, California." Back, Trump said when he released a bunch of water during the LA fires, he basically released a bunch of water that didn't go to LA. It just released water so farmers to have less water for the summer. Yes, she just like somebody whipped that up that day. And then I like this one with Canada. It's some kind of like a hand towel or something, and it said, "There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States." And that was what Trudeau said. So look up Tiny Pricks Project. It's always entertaining. This is a person who I was traveling across the U.S. In several years ago, and we went to the International Quilt Museum, and this woman, Amy Meissner, had an exhibit that I really liked, and she was a big influence on me. One, seeing how she uses doilies and a lot of these repurposed things, but also she takes like repurposed cross stitch and stuff and turns it into other things. And I really loved her text in this one. Again, it's all this repurposed, discarded needlepoint, and then you and mother, other, her. I was really intrigued by what she did. Event influences have been a lot of the marches and protests that I've seen, especially since 2017. This was one of the first. Of course, this is January 2017. It's my daughter, who was a senior in high school at the time, and she wanted my husband and I to be part of this. So of course I whipped out my little pink hat, and God bless my husband, he'll come with us to these things. It was before it started pouring rain, but it was a really memorable event. But one of the reasons it was so memorable is just the amazing signs. People made hilarious signs. I was just snapping picture after picture after picture of the funny things people wrote on them, and started really collecting phrases. And just because they were very interesting and communicative. So this was the March for Science a little bit later, and pi is all the irrationality I need. This is my daughter, who is now a seventh grade math teacher. But think outside the quadrilateral parallelogram, and science fact, not science fiction. I love this one. What do we want? Science. When do we want it? After peer review. So there's so many funny, clever things people did. And this is the last one from there. You can see like total resistance, and it's an electronic diagram, and of course pseudoscientists for Trump. So I love this one. Seeing this without being here is brought to you by science. And so you'll see more about how I'm snapping up all these phrases and keeping them. These are more recent ones. This was, I think, one of the first, I can't remember what the theme was, in April. And actually, this is a woman who took some of my classes, who made her first protest quilt. And I had to have an excuse I made my dog come with me, and I did a Dogs Against Doge made a sign on my dog. And this was the No Kings March that was recently. And again, really just intrigued by people, what people were saying. So here's actually, I already made my disclaimer about commentary quilts. So I'll show you what I have going on. And again, the way I've really, it's funny. I was quilting, I've been quilting beautiful, trying to learn how to do new things for a long time. And I had a lot of feelings about wanting to make things in quilts that express some of my,
Quality.
but I'm sorry. Oh, one of the challenges was that, you're spending anywhere from dozens and dozens to hundreds of hours on a project. And for a long time, I really put it off because I felt like I'm stewing in my things that are making me upset. So I had to find a way to be able to use these in a way or do these in a way that was constructive, that made me feel good, that wasn't making me feel like I'm stewing in my own negative juices. And I think I've come to that. But the areas that I tend to focus on are climate change, gun violence, abortion rights, and democracy. And the first one I'll talk to you about is climate change. And this was the first one that I did. And this I probably did in 2017 or something. And I call it Quilt Melt. It's really about, the ice caps melting was in the news a whole lot at that time and causing me a lot of angst. And I actually had seen another artist, a man named Faig Ahmed, who does these beautiful Persian carpets and that transform into things. I just remember seeing one where it was like a very traditional Persian carpet and it melted and it actually melted onto the floor. And I thought, and he'd done a lot of things with Persian carpets where they're projecting out at you or they're what it's supposed to look like. And then they look pixelated and stuff, but it's all woven into the beautiful carpet. And I thought I loved the idea of something that it's what it's supposed to be looking like and it's transforming. And so I thought quilts and these traditional quilt blocks were a good example of that. And it was like my first time it was the first time I did a lot of things with this. And yet it's probably been a quilt that's probably been seen more than anything else I've ever done. So it was in a Sakwa exhibit down in Southern California. It's been, it was at the International Quilt Show in Houston. It's been in a couple of other shows, but a lot of times this is what people it's been seen. It's kind of different than what a lot of the things that I do, but it's probably been the most seen of anything. I also just really like doing like little studies on a subject. So these are 3 different studies I did during the pandemic. I always think I'm going to use up all my blues or all my greens and make something, and I never use it all up. But these were, about water, the forest and wildfire. And I love just kind of taking a color study on a theme. Wildfire it was a big part of our lives in the pandemic when I was at home, had lost my job and was doing lots of quilting. Of course, water and the forest. And here in San Francisco, if you're in the Bay Area and you were here in 2020, there's a day in the fall, September 9th. Everybody knows we'll call it the day the sky turned orange. Now, this is what it looked like at noon on September 9th. And it actually looks much bright. You know how your phone kind of overcompensates and brightens things up more? It was actually much darker than this. And we woke up and there were wildfires east of us, kind of northeast of us, in Northern California, and the smoke was really high altitude, so it wasn't such bad air quality on the ground yet. But we woke up and it was just this strange. I mean, everything was orange and dark, and it was like evening where you turn on the lights on the inside and you can see it. It was very, very strange and very scary because we were all at home because of the pandemic, and then this terrible thing was happening. It just felt awful. So I became really obsessed with taking screenshots of what the air quality was. And these are little screenshots of the San Francisco Peninsula where I live. And if you're not familiar, you probably are because you've had some big air quality things coming down from, I know, from Canada. But where the green dot is green, it's very good air quality, and it gets progressively worse. There's a number assigned number range assigned to each of these colors, of course, all the way to purple, which is the worst, and it's very, very hazardous. And really, you're supposed to stay in and not leave the house, whatever your health. And so I was taking screenshots from this site called Purple Air, and each dot has a number on it, so you know what the air quality was. And I started kind of being crazy and taking screenshots all the time because it was, it'd be really bad. I mean, over the course of over the course of 2 months, it would get really bad, and then it would get better, and then it would get really bad and get really better. And so after a while, we're quilters, and everything starts looking like a quilt. So it did to me. And so so I created a great, I made a color legend from the green, the nice green, all the way to the horrible purple. And then, oops, let me go. And then over here, you can see this was on this particular day. It was kind of an odd day in San Francisco. So over here on the left is the west side of our city, and that's on the coast. And so it looked like things were kind of smoky over on that side. This is only 7 miles by 7 miles, by the way. So San Francisco is a pretty small area, but we have these microclimates with, there's mountains right in the middle here. And this is the ocean, and this is the bay, and it can be very different from the ocean to the east side. So anyway, you can see on this particular day, things were pretty good in the center of the city, right up against the mountains. But, apparently things were blowing in from the west that was pretty bad. And it was pretty bad in the center. And then some strange thing happening in the bottom, in the southeast of San Francisco. But I'm starting to kind of lay out an abstract block that I would make from each of these screenshots that I had. And so here's more of those examples. And so you kind of can see how I'm, interpreting that with my little using the legend that I made, and then started stringing them, made them put date, time, had the time on the back, and strung them all up and made it into this quilt that I call San Francisco Air Quality Fall 2020. And so on the very top up here was September of 2020. And then it got really bad, it got a little better, got really bad, get better, bad. And then on the bottom, it's like a calendar. On the bottom right was when the rain started in November, and things clear up and we don't have such bad air. It's a strange quilt, strange colors and stuff, but I've had it in a lot of shows about climate change, and it actually was selected to be in the U.S. Global Change Research. They released their 5th National Climate Assessment in 2023, and they did a call for artists to illustrate. Well, let me tell you what this report is. So with regularity, it's supposed to be every 4 years. They're supposed to do historically they have done a map, it's NOAA, NASA, Smithsonian, all of the science institutions that are tracking what's happening, in the United States. And it's the comprehensive research report of air quality, water quality, what's going on with temperature, and by region. And it's a thing that teachers could be using, researchers could use, farmers could use. I mean, it's really like the most comprehensive report, and it was an online report. And so they had done a call for artists to illustrate things on climate change, and mine was selected to illustrate the effect of wildfire on air quality and the very negative impact it's had, which has gotten a lot more attention in recent years with wildfires all over the world happening. So this report is still, they had they launched it, and the report was traveling around, but they had a geophysicist convention in San Francisco, and I got to meet the author of the section that my quilt was illustrating. That was very exciting, and that's what this is from. But the report is still up there right now, but I did learn just a couple weeks ago, all of the scientists that were supposed to be working on the 6th climate assessment have been fired. So right now, there is no plan for our government to do this report. Nobody's working on it right now. And I'm sure a lot of the scientists that were doing this research are gone too. Another one I did, data visualization, is this one that I call You're Getting Warmer. It's kind of a fuzzy, sorry, this is kind of a fuzzy photo. It's called You're Getting Warmer, Rising Global Temperatures 1850 to 2022. And what you're looking at is on the top, on the left is 1850, and the top of it is 1850 January to the bottom 1850 December on the bottom left, and you go all the way across to 2022, and the date is by month, and it's 2022 January to December. And what this is showing you is the deviation from the mean that they use. The average is bone color, so the bluer and darker it gets, the colder it was against the mean. And of course, you can see the darker and the redder, the warmer it gets. So you can really see when you're getting to, how quickly things have warmed up. And this is from a data scientist that is in the UK. His name is Ed. Oh my gosh, I'm completely blanking on his name. I have it here, Ed Watkins, I think. But he has he's made this data set available for artists to use to communicate climate change. And so he was getting frustrated that he's talking about numbers and things are changing and people weren't getting it. So he made a data set available for people to create art using this data set. So here is 1850 January, and you can see the first thing says, it's -7. So each number has let's see, I think you can see it. Each number as it gets warmer has the data amount next to it. And that's how, I followed his data set to create this thing. If you want to see any of the other things that have been created, look at warming stripes. You can Google, show your stripes or warming stripes, and you see a lot of other things, particularly in the UK and in Europe. I'm seeing a lot of people using it in, projection art, and somebody did a whole bus, system that way. So anyway, this was kind of a factory production thing because it's like over 2,000 pieces of fabric that are each 1 inch by 3.5 inches cut, and then so that it made it like an 1/2 inch and 3 inches long, and I just started sewing them all together. And I'll go back and tell you a little bit about something. I use this product if you're ever doing crafts with fabric and you want fabric to act like paper. This product, Terrio Magic, is great. Like I sprayed it all. I made my fabric damp and I sprayed it, and then you iron it and you can cut it and it acts like paper. Like you can do origami with it and everything, and it doesn't fray. But I really wanted this thing to be super straight, and bought a lot of Terrio Magic and have really liked it. It's good for applique too. If you do applique quilting, it's a great product to use. So put all these together, sewed them all, and here I am. I sew in my garage with the door open. So here I am sewing. Made a very involved label that I wanted to. This is at our quilt show where it was hanging, but I made a pretty elaborate label so that whatever happened, somebody could look at it and know exactly what this was all about. And this was, if you've ever been to San Francisco, our museum in Golden Gate Park is called the De Young. And they started a thing called the De Young Open a couple of years ago. And they did an open call for Bay Area artists, which is kind of unusual for a major metropolitan museum to do. And they would get called, they put a call out and they got like 12,000 submissions and they accepted 700. And they actually did pretty well with fiber art. So my piece was selected to hang in the De Young. It's up very high, as you can see. It's a pretty big piece. It's about 90 inches across. But I was really excited to have it in the De Young Open. And it was actually went to the Houston show, International Quilt Show in Houston last fall, and I had it in our local Quilt Guild show. Another area is gun violence. And this quilt was my first of this. I'll read it to you. It says, the number of holes in this quilt is the number that can be shot by an assault rifle in the time it takes to read this. And I saw this in a protest sign, and it had 42 holes punched in it. And in this case, I've embroidered 42 holes into this quilt. Um, and I did fact check it. So 42 in the 10 seconds that it takes to read this is well within the number of how many would be assault by an assault rifle in 10 seconds. It actually would be a lot more normally. And this was a quilt that again, not my idea, but it was such a gut punch of a protest sign. I thought nothing communicates this like this. So I've created this, and you can see my embroidered holes in it. And nobody's more surprised than me that this was like my only thing that got accepted to QuiltCon that one year. And it got a lot of attention. I was a little nervous because, I live in a pretty blue bubble here in San Francisco, and I was really heartened by the very positive response I got in North Carolina to this quilt. And then it also was in a local show here with It's Me on the Right. And I never thought this would be one of the, I mean, I don't sell a lot of quilts. They're all for sale, but a collector bought this, and she has it in her living room in a very fancy house in San Francisco. So nobody's more surprised than me that these are the things, sometimes the things people want to look at. This is another one of these. The only way to stop a bad guy with an assault weapon is a Congress with a spine. And there's 92 holes in this, and that is how many. There was, a few years ago, there's this horrible Las Vegas shooter who was mowing people down, and 92 holes in 7 seconds is basically how many, what he was shooting at that time, just to give you some idea of how horrible it was for those people. So I don't know. I do find it one of the things, it's hard to look at, but I think one of the things I'm glad to see is that people aren't expecting to see some of these messages on quilts. Some people, of course, are very offended by it. But I think that, I think sometimes, just like a lot of art, it's shocking, and it gets the point across sometimes in a place you'd least expect it. And I think that's what works for me on that. Abortion rights is another area that I'm very passionate about. And I've been passionate about it for a long time, but a lot of what I started with this line of quilts, I've made probably 20 of these so far, and I have a lot more in the works. But it started when I was driving my daughter's dog across the country, because in 2021, because the only way to get a dog across the country was to drive it, I learned. There's a business to be had to schlep dogs across the country, I think, if somebody wants to take it up on it. But we were driving her. She was going to do Teach for America on the East Coast, and we had to drive her. So my friend and I used an opportunity to drive across the country. I was so excited to go to this International Quilt Museum. And one of the other things we started doing is stopping at every antique mall along the way. Now, I'm sure like you, everybody has doilies at home. And I had a lot, we were going to these antique malls, and in addition to, quilt tops that were, orphaned, I was really enamored with these beautiful, crocheted doilies and things. And so I felt really sad about seeing them so lonely there. And I started buying doilies like there was no tomorrow. So I already had quite a few doilies. I have a lot more now. And here I am here's the dog, exhausted from walking around in the antique mall and all the doilies that I have. So the first one I did of these, I didn't know what I was doing with these doilies, but in 2022, Texas was the first state to pass an abortion ban. And I was very upset about it, as, being from there, just recognizing that women there had fewer rights than I did when I was growing up. And I felt the need to create something. And I thought, oh gosh, the Yellow Rose of Texas is a very, important song in Texas. And I had this beautiful yellow rose doily, and I decided to use it as a way to communicate my displeasure with what Texas was doing. This actually was an image that I saw somebody, have on a protest sign in Texas on the Capitol steps. I know the abortion or the hanger isn't quite the symbol people are using so much anymore, but I went with it, and of course had put my yellow rose and my blood drop to great use, and it was one of the first marches that I went to about this. This was before Roe fell too. But we knew coming up that the Supreme Court was going to be addressing this issue the following year. And so, in anticipation, I thought, I have all these quotes that I've been collecting, and I have a lot of pink and a lot of doilies. I'm going to make a bunch of, I made, I think about 15 quilts over the course of the next couple of months about the subject. And so this was the first one that I created, and it's a quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she was, um, before the Senate to become a Supreme Court justice. And it says, the decision whether or not to bear a child is central to a woman's life, to her well-being and dignity. It is a decision she must make for herself. When government controls that decision for her, she is being treated as less than a fully adult human responsible for her own choices. And I call this, fully adult human. And this was the first one that I did. It's a pretty big quilt. Um, and it was actually as part of the Text on Textiles exhibit in Houston at the International Quilt Festival there. And I went there. My hometown is Houston, by the way. And so I went there the weekend before the election, and I thought, okay, I'm going to be really brave and make a row, row, row your vote, a shirt or jacket. And so I have my patch on the back there, and I was quite heartened by the feedback I got from that. Again, I'm sure if somebody violently disagrees with me, they're not going to come up and talk to me. They just give me the stink eye, which my friends said people weren't giving me dirty looks. But I've been really pleasantly surprised by people's reactions. And I think that there's a lot more support for this than often we realize. And of course, quilts make great protest signs. So here I am with my other friends in the march. These are some of my favorites. These are all from protest signs that I've seen, all these phrases. My favorite is this one. I wish my uterus shot bullets so the government wouldn't regulate it. People love this one. I especially like the doily rifle scope. And hysterical women predicted this. We always are the ones who predict it. He who is without ovaries shall not make laws for those that do. Fallopians, 1313. I think I wish it said fallopians 24/7. But again, I didn't make any of these up. These are not my clever ideas. I saw these with on other signs. And then, can you think of any laws that give the government the power to make decisions about the male body? This was Kamala Harris, I think, when she was a senator. If men could get pregnant, abortion would be a sacrament. This is often attributed to Gloria Steinem, but she said that she didn't make it up, that actually she was in a cab in New York with an Irish lady driver cabbie who said this to her. And I thought, good for her. She gave this credit to this other woman, but it's a great quote. These are more recent ones. Again, these are things that I saw. These are things that I actually saw on the internet. I moved on him like a bit. You can see where this might be coming from. I moved on him like a bitch. I just start voting. I don't even wait. Just vote. And when you're registered, they let you do it. And you might recognize that from the conversation Trump had with George Bush's nephew or something. And then vaginas, again, protest sign, vaginas brought you into this world, vaginas will vote you out. I have learned people get very upset with vagina on things. And then last year I have so many doilies. People are giving me doilies, like I get given them all the time, and I've been using pink pink sheets and things for this. And so I didn't know what to do next. And so last year I did a survey and said, tell me what I should put on my next thing. And I had 25 phrases. And so these are the next ones I'm going to make. I have them all cut out. I just haven't had time to make them. But here's the next ones. Number 1 was, the hardest decision a woman can make isn't yours. Number 2 was, if it's not your uterus, it's not your decision. Number 3, I am woman, watch me vote. This was all before the election. This is from Cher. It's pretty long, but I think it's pretty good. If every time men had sex, they risked death, physical disability, social shunning, a life-altering interruption of their career, and the sudden lifelong responsibility for another human being, I think they'd expect a choice in the matter. It's pretty good. Pretty good point, Cher. And then the number five was wanting a child born is pro-birth. Wanting a child fed, housed, educated with parents who earn a living wage is pro-life. I have all of these letters cut out. I just have not been able to get to it. And because I've been focusing on some other issues. I have noticed that when my things are up in this was a show last fall locally. Everybody really seems to like to get their pictures with my crazy quilt. So I see them a lot reshared on Instagram, and I love that it speaks to people. And also in as I shared, people are giving me doilies like crazy. So I was at the show, and the woman on the right of me purchased the bullet hole quilt, and somebody had given me a bunch of doilies, and one of them was this one that I know is a dicky, I guess, that you would put like under your shirt and have it here and you'd see it popping out of your, your blazer or your sweater or something. But it's funny because she says it looks like a uterus. And I thought it really does look like a uterus. So I have that in mind because I have little doilies that are little circles that would be little, ovaries. And so it'll be embellishing one of the quilts that use the word uterus in it in the future. But so, democracy is a big focus for me right now. I've actually kind of been having to manage my time um, processing my feelings on this one. So, the first one I did, of course, was a vote that I put on my door every time we have an election. Um, and this was one that I made shortly after the Women's March. I had seen so many, for all these were phrases that I saw on signs at the Women's March in 2017, and I'd kept them. And again, I talk about being in the Peace Corps, and I feel I came away from that experience feeling so how important it was to vote, and how important it was to exercise your freedom of speech, and how important it was that we had multiple party system and freedom of the press and all these things, and just that we need to embrace it and honor it. And so I made, using my family's denim, made stylized flags and use these phrases. Some of these phrases I'm not sure I'd even use these days, but it was very much sort of 2017 at the moment. And it was also a way for me, I think this is the first text quilt I made. So I just was, cutting it out, sewing it down. It's all pretty raw, and that was kind of the intention. And I but I call it American Patriot Words Matter. And again, feel very, very strongly that I'm an American, and my views are American and patriotic too. More recently, I've made this one. This is a piece that's actually in a show right now, and I'll tell you a little bit about the story of it. It's text. It's called "No Person is Above the Law," and it's text that I made and then chopped it up and re-sewed it. A couple of years ago, when I think Donald Trump was being tried, one of the trials, and I was feeling like actually feeling good that we are a country of laws and nobody is above the law, and people get held accountable for their behavior, and the January 6th people were being convicted, and I was feeling like things are working out the way they're supposed to be. I don't know what it's going to be, but you just want people to have a fair trial, and we're a nation of laws and not men, right? So I just made this piece, and it's kind of small, and I threw it on the side of my garage. And then last summer, when the Supreme Court said, I think I personally believe wrongly, said that anything Trump does or anything a president does in the process of being president is not illegal, and kind of gave him, any president, pretty strong rights. I was really upset, and I just took this and I chopped it up and I repieced it because I feel like that's basically what happened to our system. So it's very upsetting. And I literally just kind of tossed it aside. I didn't know, it's not like a beautiful piece or anything. And so it actually, interestingly, it's in a show right now locally that had this great prompt, and the whole idea, and it was for artists, so there's painters and sculptors and things. But the whole idea was like, did you have a piece of art? It's called making and mending, but the whole theme was, did you have something that you made and you discarded it and you took it and you completely redid it, put it in the show? And I thought, oh, this kind of does it. So I had to dig it out from the pile, and it's in there unfinished with this raw edge. And I like it's getting a lot of attention, so I like it. Again, sometimes I just like cut out letters and put them on something because that's what I'm feeling about that day. So I've been feeling very strongly, particularly for my kids. I mean, I've always been pretty active politically. I do a lot of local, I'm very active in local politics and supporting local politicians and hosting, fundraisers and meet and greet and everything. But I mostly just really want my kids to be recognizing that, this is not a rehearsal. It's not, you're part of this too. And I feel very strongly and increasingly so that democracy is really critical for our future. And if you've ever wondered what you would have done during slavery, the Holocaust, or the Civil Rights Movement, you are doing it now. So it's a little scoldy, I realize, but again, I saw this on a protest sign and I thought, this is really speaking to me right now. This is the most recent things, my husband and I, and the No Kings protest. I found a great way, if you're interested, I can share, to make the hold signs using PVC pipe that you just get at Home Depot or Lowe's. That's a half an inch, and it makes it very easy to hold things. But I looked all over San Francisco to find gold lame because I really wanted to make a gold lame crown, and I found it in the Haight-Ashbury. You can always count on the Haight-Ashbury. So I'm finishing up here, but I wanted to let you know that I'm working on a project with another friend that's called Forbidden Words, and it's a national group quilt project that we're going to be launching next month and having go on during the fall. And if you Google PEN banned words, you'll see a list of 370 words or phrases that are being banned or scrubbed from government communications. And it's, of course, everything from abortion and accessible activism to the Gulf of Mexico is one of them. And so we're kind of figuring out how to do this, but it's going to be a two-sided quilt with 1-inch letters featuring 370 words that are in that'll be featured from this. We just got permission from Penn today, and I also want to have people not go out and buy fabric, but like use men's shirting to do this. And so we're putting together the directions and how to participate. If you're interested in doing it, I'll be having a workshop on how I make my letters. It's just feasible and cutting things out from a template, and how to debone a men's shirt to use for use the fabric for the quilting. Each of these this was my little beginning test for what it would look like on men's shirting. But these are all, I don't want people to go spend a lot of money on new fabric to do things like this. So, but it details on how to participate. It'll be on my Instagram and on my monthly newsletter in August that I'll be launching. And so, thank you for having me. In closing, and my website is quiltinginthefog.com, and my Instagram is at quiltinginthefog. If you're interested in getting my newsletter, I just do it once a month, but that is where we'll be talking a lot more about there and Instagram. I'll be sharing that in my August newsletter, and the resources and how to participate. I'm really hoping we'll have people from every single state in the country participate in this. There's certainly enough words for everybody to do it. And our goal is to be doing this from August and have people, we'll have several different kind of Zoom meetings and, Q&As for how to do it all. And my goal is that we get all the words by January and pull it together in the spring. Any questions? Maybe I should stop sharing.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. I liked it.
Thank you.
I was watching the chat to see if there was anything in here, question wise. Here's one. Is the assault rifle quilt in the national show at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts?
No. Somebody acquired the one that says the number of holes. It's in a private collection, but the Congress one hasn't happened. I have a whole other series of quotes and facts that I'm using. I'm actually considering working with actually, no, she lives in Michigan. There's a woman on her Instagram is called Seam Ripper Society, and she does a lot of things with gun violence. And we've been talking about partnering and putting together, curating a show because there's a lot there's at QuiltCon into the year my quilt was there. There was a lot of quilts about gun violence. I mean, there's probably like five or six. It was kind of surprising. And the Best in Show was a big one about gun violence.
Yeah,
I would love for it to be. I would love to have a quilts and collections.
well, someday, forever you will. Um, I like the idea of the project with the all the words in it. I think that would be a cool thing to do.
The whole idea came up. I did a Zoom workshop on how I do letters because a lot of people were saying I want to do text for protest signs, and I thought it's perfect for that. And it's a very simple thing. So I did a Zoom workshop about earlier in June, and in the process of that, there were like 25 people all over the country, and we're cutting letters and meandering, and I'd said, there's this list. I keep seeing these lists, and if you've ever written like government grants, like I've written a lot of grants for National Park Foundation or whatever, it's interesting because like now they're saying any grants that have these words in it, they're not doing the grant or whatever. So I've been very familiar with a lot of these words, and it was just alarming. So I'd said something like, gosh, I just really want to do something, a quilt using all these words. And really everyone on this Zoom workshop, like 25 people go, I want to do that. I want to participate. And I thought, oh gosh. So my friend who was helping me, manage the Zoom workshop and I are organizing it. And I thought, oh, it's also a great example of sometimes you're just kind of talking about people and other people give you ideas and it makes it so much better. And so this is just such an example of, I was just sitting there thinking, I'm going to sit there and do this thing all by myself. And then I'm realizing like, no, this is going to be so much better and stronger and powerful if we have lots of people participating. So stay tuned. I'd love all of you to participate and just do one word. But we're putting it all together to make it easy to communicate and make it easy for people to do. And we'll do a couple of little Zoom workshops for, how to cut out the letters and stuff and fuse them. It's just fusible. It's just fusible in a template. And I basically cut out a letter and then I fuse it onto white and then I cut it out with pinking shears and then you fuse it onto your piece. That's all there is to it. And then I usually do sew it down because I don't want it to ever come off.
Sounds simple enough.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then you can make happy birthday, congratulations. You can do, as I say, I call the workshop express yourself, in text. And it's like everything from, happy birthday to smash the patriarchy, whatever you want to say. So you can use it lots of fun ways.
Right. Great. Okay, so another question is, do you work on one series at a time or do you switch from, say, commentary quilts to polytone?
Yeah, I do switch because sometimes you just kind of get a little stewed. I spent a lot of time on commentary in the last year, and then I actually have a show locally that's just polychrome, and it's going to be, colorful big things. And I'm making more big things, colorful things, and it's just kind of fun to be not thinking. I like having the variety because it's kind of like, sometimes you want to have a savory and sometimes you want to have a sweet. So it allows you to kind of to switch off. But I have a whole pile of I cut out phrases and I'll put them in a little baggie to make things. So I have a lot of quilts ready to get made with letters cut out that I just haven't been able to get to. And always new ideas. Every day a new thing comes up.
Right, thank you. The next question is, do you dye your own fabrics, such as for the global warming colors?
No, that is something I'm taking a lot of my friends are really into dyeing and I haven't ventured there. I just use Kona cotton for that. I just sourced it based on, the color that I was creating. Yeah, I don't dye. I'm taking my first dye class, I think at the end of this month. I've never done it, but would really, there's so many things I would like to be taking classes about, and but I can't even get the things I want done. Plus
Yeah,
teaching, I'm doing a lot of teaching locally, so that takes up a lot of time.
yeah. It's amazing how much time things take sometimes.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of positive feedback on your presentation. Things like
Oh,
great presentation, very inspiring, terrific presentation. Thank you very much.
oh, thanks.
Um, when are you announcing the specs on the Word project?
So I'm going to be doing it. Our goal is to launch it in the beginning of August. So um, if you follow me on Instagram, I'll be pushing it out there. If you go to my website, I'll also be I have a once a month newsletter, and I'll be putting it in my August newsletter. So next month. We just have to figure it all out. We want to make a really good, piece, and I want to have little tutorials and stuff that people can access to do it, and we'll schedule, opportunities for people to ask questions. But I want to make sure that I can give you something that's kind of a standalone without me, that doesn't require me telling you, but I still will provide opportunities to do tutorials. So next month.
Okay. So wait, I had my own question about the climate quilt you did with the, you said you used theTerial spray to make them paper-like.
Yeah.
Why was that exactly? I didn't catch the.
Well, I just wanted it to be, I could see if you're doing, I don't know, like whenever I do really elaborate, like skinny log cabins, they all start warping. Like I wanted it to be really straight. I wanted it to hang really straight. And so this Terrial mat, you can get it at like Blick's or Michael's, and you spray it, and it really just makes it hard. It really makes it like thick cardstock. And so
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just
it's like
helped.
paper.
It means that I could like I cut all these pieces, very exact size, but I could just like sew them in a line and they stayed straight.
Okay.
But it is really good if you do if you do applique, it's a good, you can spray it and then iron it, and it makes it really hard and it washes out. So it's great for fabric, for cutting things out and making, if you want it to act like paper, and then you can sew it down, and then I mean, I hadn't really thought of it. I mean, it's certain now that I'm thinking out loud here, but like I haven't really tried using that for cutting out letters, because I like using the fusible, because I can just take it and cut it out and iron it onto something. It might be a way to make, if you don't have fusible, to make bigger letters, but I think it would just be a little hard to, it would be harder to do.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So that's all the questions on the chat. Does anybody else have any? They want to go off of mute and ask you directly?
I don't know, this is Barbara. I don't know if I missed it, but did you talk about the quilt behind you?
Oh, this is a quilt made from my husband's shirts. And it's actually going to be, I'll sit over here. It's actually, it's really dark all the way around. It's kind of pretty close up here, but it's going to be and it was in a Sakwa exhibit, the blue exhibit that's launching I think in Europe this summer. But yeah, it's all made out of men's shirting. And there's a guy named Brandon Wolf, and he's on Instagram. He's called Just Another Autistic Guy. And I saw a quilt that he'd made, and I'm always looking at quilts and trying to figure out how things are being made. And I remember looking at it thinking, how did he do that? And then so I took his workshop, and he calls it biscotti, because what you do is you make a big giant log cabin, and then you chop it up into squares and you rearrange it. And so he teaches that method. I'd love to teach it, but it's sort of his thing. And I've made several this way. I love the way it looks. And I'm doing some other versions of it that are actually using chopping it up into triangles. But it's really fun. But yeah, shirts. I love using shirts. So that's what this one is. And my husband still has plenty of clothing, even though I am chopping up a lot of his shirts.
Great. Anybody else? Well, I guess we're done. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and would love to work with any of you on this Forbidden Words project as it comes up. But follow me on Instagram or sign up. You can email me at Lorraine at quiltinginthefog.com, or go on my website and sign up for my newsletter, and that way you'll be sure to get all the information. But we'd love to have as many people participate as possible. It's going to be a big giant quilt, that's for sure. 2 sides.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye. All right, so get back to our meeting here. So, upcoming programs on Saturday, we are having a trunk show, which is a retrospective collection of Wilhelmina Vandervoort. She has award-winning quilts throughout her career, and she has 30 years worth of hand quilted award winners to show us. So she's going to bring those on Saturday and show us in person. So the Saturday meeting is an in-person only meeting, so there'll be no Zoom on that one. So made that decision for a number of reasons. One being that these are really something you see in person, I think, and probably you should be coming to the picnic besides that. So the people on Zoom should be very minimal anyway. So anyway, the annual picnic will immediately follow that the meeting, and it is a potluck picnic, so please bring something to share. Oh, MQ will provide things like hot dogs, buns, and condiments, and so bring something that goes with that, if you will, please. And later in July, we have a barn quilt painting class. I would like to be looking for more people here, but I don't need to because it's full. And I think we have 20 people signed up, and there's a short waiting list. So you still take your chances, I guess. We could always have somebody that drops out if you really want to get on the waiting list. And in August, we have Timna Tar, who is going to have a Flying Colors trunk show. She's out from the East Coast someplace, and she does a lot of nice collage type quilts and lots of nice, pretty bright colors. And Marty Curry is a local person, and she's going to be talking about quilting foreplay, which is about things you need to do before you actually start quilting, getting materials ready and getting, not only just organizing and gathering materials, but maybe which materials to use and how to prepare them. And there are some day retreats coming up. There's in the next 3-4 months, there are day retreats every month. Here are the host. If you want to sign up to attend one, go on the excuse me, the website and register with the link that's on the site. So as soon as the link opens up for registration, it will go onto the site, and so you can look there. And we'll also send it out in the newsletter on Thursday, Thimbleflows. And if you want something more than a day retreat, there is also a fall getaway retreat. So this is an overnight retreat in October 1st through 5th at Riverside Inn in Cold Spring. Cynthia Davis is the host, and she will be organizing some more information about that. There's a lot of plans that are being made, but I can't tell you about any of them because they're all kind of up in the air. So watch for the details in the newsletter on the website as we come forward here. But that's in October, so save the date for that one. And then show and tell. I think we didn't get anybody to send in any pictures, but if anybody in the room now has something for show and tell, would they like to share it?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Um,
Do you want to,
She
you
she
want to
was
show a
talking about,
screen?
she was talking about protest quilts. And I don't know if I can get my pants to the backside. I had a little door thing I hung on my door. It was a sunbonnet Sioux block. And she was carrying a flag and there were fireworks in the quilting. And I hadn't used it for a while because the flag just seemed to be something that had been co-opted by the far right. And then I added a No Kings flag to it this summer and added that to the quilt. Let's see. If I start video, will it show it? No, it doesn't show me.
Hang on,
I can see part of you.
Okay.
wait, I have to make you a host. Hang on a second here. Let me do that.
Well, yeah. I switched my camera to the back, so it should.
Oh, there, I have to find you on. Linda, help me out here. I have to find her on the participant list.
Well, we just need to let anybody share. Hold on. Okay, she should be able to share.
Okay, so what do I have to do now?
You see the
You-
share button at the bottom of your screen? It's green and it's kind of in the middle.
No, I'm on my iPad, so I don't.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
can help you.
I just thought if the one that would show me as a participant, if I've got the camera to the back, it should show it from the back. But yeah, never mind.
Maybe turn it around. We see your face in part of the quilt.
Well, I don't know what to do. Okay.
All right,
You'll have
hold
to
it
try
up.
describing it.
Hold it up in front of your face.
I was gonna say, hold it up in front of your camera, and if everybody else, if you go up to the top and look at view and put it on speaker versus gallery, it will blow whoever is speaking up.
Yes, thank
to
you.
There
the full.
it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
Much better.
There. She's got the little, I don't know if you can see the little flag she's got.
Yes.
You gotta back,
Yes,
you gotta back up further.
yeah. There, now the whole thing is in, or more or less.
All right.
Yes, see the flag and we can see the little stars all around in the background.
Yeah. Anyhow, I drew the little No Kings flag